from the American Academy of Pediatrics.
David, few people know better than you what it means to run for AAP president. The commitment, the messaging, and the passion for really wanting to improve children's health.
You know, I was so honored to be nominated to run, and what's incredible about the process is that the person you run against is always an equally compassionate and motivated pediatrician who wants to make a real difference in the lives of kids. Those are the people I want to surround myself with.
Well, David, you are in luck because we have the president of the AAP here today on the show, Dr. Sue Cressley. You might remember her from our Best Practices episodes where she discussed how to manage a well-child visit, but today she is here for something completely different.
Joanna, you opened up this episode talking about getting to the heart of what it means to be a pediatrician today. So does that mean we're going to do our special feature, Pathways to Pediatrics?
Oh, David, so smart. You bet. Pathways to Pediatrics lets us meet people in our profession and find out how they got to and through pediatrics. And today we welcome back Dr. Cressley. She's a pediatrician with decades of experience in general pediatrics, practice management, and also in information technology. She has held many roles within the AAP, including president of the Pennsylvania chapter, chair of the section on administration and practice management, and now she is the AAP president. Sue, welcome back to the show.
Thanks so much, and it's great to be with both of you.
Well, it is a joy to have you back, Sue. So let's start where most things begin, with your childhood. Many times when we do a Pathways, we hear that being a pediatrician wasn't people's first choice, but more of a calling. But you always wanted to be a pediatrician. How did you hear that call so early?
So it's very interesting. And yes, from toddlerhood, from the time I think I was 4, I told people I was going to be a pediatrician. And the most interesting thing about that is I didn't have a pediatrician. I had a family doc in my small rural community in Pennsylvania whose office was at the end of my block. And he had this great stash of lollipops, but all these cool jars with medicines and tongue depressors and things I didn't have a clue what they were. And so I found his whole office fascinating. And I used to ride my bike down the block under the guise of wanting a lollipop, but I really wanted to poke around and find out what was going on in his office. And he noticed me coming in an awful lot. And at one point he said to me, "You should become a doctor like me." I'm like, "I don't think so. There's all these smelly old people in your office." Of course, now I am one of those smelly old people. So I don't think I want to take care of smelly old people. And he said, "Well, you can be a doctor and just take care of kids." I'm like, "No way. You don't just take care of kids." He said, "That's because I'm a family doc, but it's called a pediatrician." And I'm like, "Okay, that's what I want to be." And so from that point on, I was telling everybody I wanted to be a pediatrician because I could just take care of kids and got to play with all the cool things and the cool toys in a doctor's office.
But you are a caretaker at heart. The first people I know that you probably really had to care for were your parents, who both died in their 50s. And, when I think about grandparents, they are such an important part of defining me as a parent. So how did their deaths influence you both as a parent and as a doctor?
Yeah, unfortunately, they both died way too soon, which had huge implications for raising my own son and family time beyond that. But my dad got sick from non-A, non-B, non-C, non-Delta hepatitis, probably had some viral hepatitis when he was traveling as a young engineer to Brazil and other countries, but presented with esophageal varices and a bleed when I was in college. And so really quickly, you have conversations in your house about what does it mean to not be well and how does it change and influence the rest of your family. And while he was battling that, my mom at 53 got diagnosed with renal carcinoma. And so for both of them, we had a commitment as a family to be honest and open and transparent and to be real and to make changes in our life that honored being mindfully present every day with people who mattered, planning for the future with hope, but understanding that everything may happen out of the blue that you're not prepared for, And if you're together as a family and you talk openly and honestly, the journey is really what matters and the people that you care about and you love. So it was really the privilege of my lifetime to be with both of them. And even though I lost them early, I have no regrets. There were so many stories and things that we shared of our childhood and pictures and family memories we created because we didn't know how many more we would have. And although my son never met either of my parents, I think he knows them well because they're in our stories. And one of the things that we do with the people that we love is we incorporate them into our stories. And thanks for asking me about them. People tend to realize when your family doesn't show up that, there's a big question mark that they don't touch, but they're here. They followed me here, and they're in part the reason that I'm here because they really taught me to make the most of every opportunity that you have and to do things that impact other people's lives, which is where both of them got a lot of their joy, which was doing not only things for themselves, but really for the family and the larger community.
Well, I would say your parents are both showing up in the way that you show up every day for kids and for the Academy. So thank you for sharing that with us. Now, you were in general pediatrics for a long time. In fact, you're in practice in Pennsylvania, and that got bought out by large healthcare conglomerates. So you opened your own independent practice in 2004. Opening a practice is a huge undertaking. Can you give us your roses and thorns of managing a private practice?
Sure, and it was the best decision of my life. And anybody who's entertaining it, reach out to me and we'll talk about the joys and the tribulations, but mostly the joys and the opportunities. It's really opportunities. And so, 2004, people would think I was crazy going out in a solo practice by myself. Actually, my practice logo was a blonde girl hanging from a limb on a tree because I told everybody I went out on a limb. Turned out it was a pretty good limb to go out on, but I saw that the practice of medicine was changing. The patients needed different things from us. And the partners in the private practice that I was in really were a little bit, I think, driven by fear, and the fear that if they didn't get big, they would become obsolete and not be able to serve their community. And I'm still great friends with lots of them, and I understand that, but I am a risk taker and someone who's willing to really try and fail if need be to do something a different way. I was always the person who colored outside the lines and the middle child rebel in my family. So it's probably no surprise to people who know me that at some point I would decide to color outside the lines and build something my own. And I had this vision. I practiced for almost 15 years in that practice, and I watched things change, and I watched the opportunity of technology, and I thought, the technology isn't working for us, so why don't we build it the way we need it? And so I started really asking a lot of questions. I think one of the things that I've been talking about to people last year as president-elect is how do you regain the curiosity that leads to innovation and joy? If we can recapture that 3 to 4-year-old who asks you, 25 why questions in an hour, why do fish swim around in schools? Where do birds sleep? All of those questions. If we could recapture that curiosity that we see every day in our patients and apply it to the families we serve, the way we practice medicine, how do we take those opportunities of innovation and make them work for us, not just take the healthcare delivery system and patient care as it is, but imagine what it could be? There was so much tremendous opportunity and hope and joy in that. And then I got buy-in, people started getting excited and say okay, so what are you envisioning? And I'm like, okay, let's start with how do we take the top 10 reasons people call their pediatrician and shouldn't have to? And then let people answer the phone where they matter, where people need a human contact or a voice, or bring patients into the office where they really benefit from a caring hand and a hug when needed and someone who really connects with them on a personal level. And so the tagline of my office was traditional medicine using technology in partnership with families. And that's really what really set me off in a direction to really think about this in a patient-centered medical home model before it was really taking off in ways that people are promoting and really trying to get back to.
Well, one of my favorite things about you is that you do call yourself an accidental informaticist. And you really incorporated, as you were talking about, health IT, even though it's ever changing and something that it's hard to keep on top of. So how do you envision things like AI and other technologies are going to influence pediatrics moving forward?
Well, it's up to us, isn't it? So I think that we've had some lessons learned with electronic health records and other innovations where they're made for the adult population, and then we sit and wait for someone to figure out how do we adapt it or adopt it in the pediatric population? Look at ventilators. Look at IV catheters. Look at any of the technology, even medications. We always seem to be waiting our turn. Well, going back to that, my family doctor where I don't want to take care of stinky old people. Well, what would happen if we imagined this and made it child first? Because I bet if we did that and we looked at the life course of a child, which can be anywhere from a premature infant, to a young adult, we understand the dynamics of the needs that change over the life course of kids. So if we started with that lens of a developmentally growth-appropriate technology, if we started there, certainly we can apply it to adults and aging adults and adults who have caregivers like their children, whether that's, technology, portal messaging. But let's get back to that AI piece, right? Let's take what we learned and use it in a way that protects children and families' secure information. We remove bias that most of the AI and the populations that people think about are really being grounded and informed by work that's based on adult healthcare. And so already we're starting to see AI tools that are not based with child data and that developmental life course of data. So let's start it from the beginning and let's lead and tell people, hey, this isn't excluding adults. This is changing the way we build technology so that it works for everyone, because then you can personalize it based on the needs of the patient in front of you instead of building it for the average patient. It's interesting. You'll love this story. I was riding in a car with someone recently who told me that they hate their voice recognition in their car direction, Siri or whoever you want to call it, because they never understand them. And I said, you understand that the technology was built with young male white voices. So if you happen to be a young white man, you don't get frustrated by your car navigation system not understanding you. If you happen to be somebody else, that system does not pick up the voice resonance of the rest of us. So I actually just changed mine to a young Aussie guy because I get less aggravated with him when he tells me that he can't understand me. But that's working around the technology. If we take that paradigm of informing something that people use every day, and we use technology that incorporates all of the voices of all of the people in all of the lived experiences of families that we serve, think of the power we have in the tools. And so let's lead that and make the case not just for kids, but if we make it appropriate for everyone, that's child inclusive and life course inclusive, we're in a totally different place.
Just so you know, mine is an Australian woman.
Yeah, it doesn't aggravate you
and
either.
It really throws people off. Yeah.
Wait, I have a question, David. Who's yours?
Yeah, I went with the default. I did not know I could change it.
Oh, well. Now you've learned something in a Pathways to Pediatrics.
I have. I'm
to take back to your car.
Yeah, exactly. I gotta fix that right away. So you have this incredible career in pediatrics, you have a family, and in 2020 you decide to retire and move from Pennsylvania to Florida, only to face Hurricane Ian. How did this hurricane shift your views on children's health?
Wow. Yeah, talk about being hit by a hurricane on several levels. And you know me, retirement looks different people. While I was having fun walking on the beach and helping rescue herons and pelicans, I was also consulting and helping other practices in their practice management and health IT, but it was on my terms, and so that I could actually be around to share my grandkids' birthdays and holidays when I had missed so many of my own, running my own practice and being on call. And you both know the toll that takes on our families. It's really, when you're a pediatrician, it's not just a commitment for you. It's your whole family makes that commitment to serving your community and the kids that you take care of. But Hurricane Ian, first of all, it brought to light what I learned from losing my parents, which is that it's just, when we lost stuff, I lost all my Christmas ornaments. I lost my wine cellar. I lost all my AAP awards. I lost a lot of things. The first floor of my home is in somewhere in the Gulf of Mexico or in a lagoon somewhere. But it's just stuff. My husband and I and the people that I cared about were safe. And I was privileged enough to be in a position to financially rebuild. That was not the same thing for many of my friends and neighbors on the island community. And it really hit home how fragile life is, and back to my parents and making every day matter. And so what do you do every day that matters to making the world a better place? Well, we all know that as pediatricians, it's sort of our default. We're there to spread the hope and the love and the joy of the future of the world. And kids are definitely the hope and the joy that we can see. But I will also say that I didn't expect to have to think about environmental impacts and disaster planning as a platform and a cause that I cared about, but it found me. And it's in so many places. The kids, there's a great elementary school, K-8 on Sanibel Island, where you'd think it's a small school, but it's actually a state-run school, a county-run school that is got about 26 kids per grade, and they split them into 2 classrooms. So the average class size is somewhere between 13 and 15, and they're on the back side of Ding Darling Natural Park, so they go outside and do things. It's a great place to be. Those kids were out of school for almost the entire year after Ian, except it was the island's first priority to bring the kids back to school so they could stay together and learn in their community. They just got hit again in Milton. There's flooding and there's impact, and we're going to try to minimize it. But looking at the social and emotional and mental impacts on those kids, not just the fact that their families lost, some of them their homes, they lost their place to live, but that's being woven into really what will make them the people that they are. And the most hopeful thing that I've seen is the caring community around them that is doing everything it can to make sure that they are as okay as they can be and support them in a way that really looks at their world in a trauma-informed way and incorporating that. And I really do think that the changing climate environment, and most people don't realize that this will impact kids in so many more ways than those of us who are on the other side of our lived experience, in ways that my 31-year-old is not sure that he wants to have children, because he's not sure that the planet is going to be a safe place to raise them, which as a pediatrician is just so disheartening to me. But it's a reality that we talk through as a family, and we talk about what are the responsibilities and opportunities for his generation and the younger generation. It is the kids of the community of Sanibel who are speaking up and holding the adults accountable for creating a future that is one in which they can thrive and live and choose to grow and have their own families. But we're going to have to listen to them. We have to do a way better job of listening to the kids and the environment. And as it often happens, lots of things come down to money. We all know that in the underpayment of pediatric funding. It's true in climate awareness and environmental impacts. It's very easy to have the privileged want to live on beach communities, but at some point, there's a price that the whole population pays for the infrastructure that supports that. Sanibel's more resilient than most island communities because 2/3 of it is preserved natural habitat. The city of Sanibel seceded from Lee County in the 70s because they wanted to create an environment that was more in harmony with nature. We call it a sanctuary island, where we live in harmony with nature. But both nature and the island are being threatened if we don't pay attention to the human impacts of climate change and how we can create a better environmental future for our kids.
Well, I'm struck by how much you talked about community, and you've contributed so much to this community of pediatricians that's listening. And now you're going to be AAP president. So what are your goals in that role?
Wow. So I have to say that I've learned way more from the pediatricians that are listening than they think they learned from me. I sometimes am the person who will speak up and be the voice for them where they feel like they're not in a position to speak up, speak out, and color outside the lines. So I'm hoping to be a bastion of hope that I can bring their voice forward and their concerns. And that starts with making sure that every single pediatrician feels seen, heard, and valued. We know how much that means to our families, but we often forget it also means the same thing for our colleagues. Our colleagues are hurting in different ways in different parts of the country. In healthcare delivery, they don't have the resources they need to take care of the patients that they are privileged to serve and really want to care for and care about. And so I'm hoping to make sure that they feel like they can see themselves in me because I am them. There is no special person that ends up being the AAP president. It's just a pediatrician who wants to do great things for kids and the profession and keep saying yes and keep showing up. You know, I've said multiple times over the past year that every day we show up, every day pediatricians show up is a better day for kids. I truly mean that. And we just have to keep showing up. And hopefully we can get together and be innovative and re-spark that curiosity and find our own path forward instead of waiting for someone else to create the future that we want and know we deserve. Let's imagine it and then figure out a way that everybody gets buy-in and can get on board with the same vision that we have.
Well, I love that vision, and I want to thank you for bringing your vision to us today. It's been a pleasure as always, but before we let you go, can you tell us one thing that you love about being a pediatrician?
I think it is the unexpected honesty of children. They will tell you like it is when the people around you, sometimes you're in a silo and people are saying what they think you want to hear. There's always the truth. My grandkids will say, like, Grandma, like, who thought that was a good idea? Like, really?
I think we all have those stories from our kids or our grandkids. And thank you so much, Dr. Sue Cressley, for coming on and sharing with us today.
Thank you so much for having me, and keep on doing this awesome job of the podcast. I think it's an awesome way to let pediatricians feel connected to others in our collective community.
Thank you so much for that. And for more on Dr. Sue Cressley and to learn about past AAP presidents and why you should run too, visit our website at aap.org/podcast.
That's it for today's episode. If you like Pediatrics on Call, please subscribe on your favorite podcast app and help us spread the word. Follow us on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram at Pediatrics on Call.
Pediatrics on Call is a production of the American Academy of Pediatrics. Our producer and editor is Ann Johnsos. Our audio engineer is Doug Nagel. Joe Puskars is our associate producer, and Susan Martin is our executive producer. Our theme music was composed by Matthew Simonson. Join us next week when we'll talk about resuscitation efforts after drowning events.
We'll speak with Dr. Tracy McCallum about a focused update for the AAP and the American Heart Association. I'm Dr. David Hill.
And I'm Dr. Joanna Pargavalinki. Thanks for listening.